So in this week's Natural Gardening Live, we are talking about, what are we talking about today? We are talking about the wildlife that lives in your garden, how it supports your garden, and how you can support them or it. From insects to birds and even the small mammals, they all offer a bit of support for your garden and for you as a gardener as well. As the weather gets colder and the food becomes more scarce, it's very useful and very responsible as well for you to know how to look after them, how to support them. This could actually drastically improve the chance of them surviving the winter, which is quite a big deal, especially when it comes to the benefits they can offer your garden. Welcome to this week's Natural Gardening Live with me, Josie Rainbird, your natural gardening coach. So, the insects and wildlife living in your garden, as I say, can offer a range of benefits, including pollination, promoting the health of your garden, like pest control, releasing nutrients in the soil, as we've spoken about before, a range of different benefits. They are most definitely worth looking after, but how can you support them when the weather gets colder? What can you actively do to support them as the weather gets colder and we head into winter? So today I've got four step program. I have 4 simple ways you can support the wildlife and insects living in your garden to help improve their chances of surviving the winter and for them to then stay in your garden and support your garden as we come into the new growing year. So that's what we're talking about today. So question for you. Do you feed the birds and the wildlife in your garden? So do you have feeders? Do you put feeders out? Do you have trays, bowls with different foods in? Let me know in the comments what you feed and what you see visiting your garden. So let me know in the comments. It'd be interesting to see. And if you've got any pictures, obviously, love to see pictures. Post in the group if you've got any pictures. Yeah, it'd be nice to see the different areas that you're in, the different wildlife that visits your garden. One thing I'd like to visit my garden would be a hedgehog. We don't get hedgehogs very often around here, but we do get red squirrels. We get a variety of different things that we get visiting the wildlife and things. So, but it would be nice to have a hedgehog. Just saying. One day we might see one. Number 1 of the 4 things. So, did you know birds actually need different types of foods? Different birds, different types of foods. If you know what birds visit your garden or what birds you want to encourage into your garden, you can focus feed them, if you like. You can focus feed these birds with the foods that they actually want, they actually need. So by feeding a variety of different feeds in different feeders, different trays, that sort of thing, feeding a variety of different feeds, you will support a variety, I can't talk today, a variety of different birds and more likely to stick around in your garden through the winter months because you're going to be feeding them, look after them, and then they'll hang around to the spring. Feeding a higher calorie suet-based or peanuts or mealworms and things like that, high calorie feeds in the winter months is a great way of providing more energy rich feeding, sort of more energy for your birds, helping them to keep healthy and warm as the weather becomes more challenging, but they have to eat less of it to get the same amount of energy. So they'd have to eat more seed to get the same energy as they would eating less suet. That makes sense? It's really badly described, I'm sorry. But yeah, so by feeding these higher calorie feeds, they don't need to eat as much of it to get the same result. But these are really only recommended for the colder months for this reason, that they provide more energy. The birds don't need this really in the spring and summer. And when the early spring, maybe you can get away with it. But as soon as the weather starts to warm up and there's things about insects about, you want to stop feeding them the high calorie stuff because they're not going to want to. One, they don't need it. They don't need that higher energy. They're not going to want to feed on the insects and the bugs and things in your garden that you want them to manage the population of. And then you're going to kind of shoot yourself in the foot because it's going to cost you a fortune to keep feeding them. So ideally only the winter months for this one. But yes, that really will help. It will go a long way to supporting them, giving them slightly higher calorie foods as well. So number 2 is maybe an obvious one, goes hand in hand with feeding, is fresh water. So fresh water can be one of the hardest things to find in the winter months. Now, as much as in the winter, don't know if it's the same where you are, but it definitely does here. It can rain for days. It can. But the rain can become muddy and polluted and frozen from time to time as well in the winter and can just be really difficult for the wildlife to access. So by simply putting out a bowl of water, or if you've got a pond in your garden, that can work as well. This can ensure that there's always fresh water available to the wildlife living in your garden, or the wildlife you want to encourage into your garden as well. So this really works really well. But it's vital for them if you're feeding them or they're finding food in the wild. Fresh water is a vital part of it. So if you're providing the fresh water, even if you're not feeding them, it's important to them, so they will be attracted to it. So nesting material and shelters. Okay, so in the spring, the springtime is the best time really to providing nesting material for the birds. They get ready to nest, they get ready to lay eggs, going into fledglings, that sort of things. So this is a really good time, obviously. This is the time people start to put out nesting material and provide nesting materials and things for the birds mainly, and for small animals and things. But the winter months are actually really good time to be providing. I'll go down the list of nesting material in a minute as well. It's a really good time to be providing this to help maintain a good, insulated and safe housing or nest, so you want to look at it. Nesting material is really important. It can drastically improve the chances of them surviving the winter. There's extra warmth for them as well, and things they don't have to go actively looking for if you've got it there for them. So wintertime is as good as spring for providing this. Say nesting material like fur, pet fur is always good. If you've got a cat, dog fur, if you've got a thick coated dog, anything like that, that's really good. Dried leaves and grasses, they're really good for nesting material. And twigs. Twigs work really well as well to making the structure of the housing, so that's fine. But if you have a space in your garden, I love this, if you've got space in your garden that you can let go a little bit, you can let go back to nature, providing a safe space with stones, long grass, overgrowth, mossy logs, things like that, little piles of stones and things. This will serve the wildlife in your garden, an amazing space to overwinter. It'll provide them food, it'll provide them shelter as well. So they'll find everything they need in this space. They will be safe, and it will 100 times over, it will encourage them to stay because everything they need is going to be in this area. We've got an area like this, I've probably mentioned a few times. We've got an area like this at the bottom of the garden, and it's amazing, and it does the job really nicely. It's got stones in there, and it's got areas for insects to live, and it's got mossy logs growing in it, all sorts of different greenery growing, later flowering, which I'll go into in a minute, later flowering plants as well, so they get the later nectar, all sorts of things going on. When the leaves fall as well, I gather them up into little piles in there, so that's really good. So this space creates a really good home to overwinter any insects and wildlife that are looking for a place to be safe, to live overwinter, keep them warm. So that works really well. So if you've got that as a good shelter spot, that works fantastically. So it's the fourth one. I think at this point, actually, I think I've got 6, but this is number 4. It's just because I waffle. So later flowering plants, we just said about the living space, the wild area that you can put in your garden. They'll provide all sorts of shelter and cover and food and things for the wildlife. Adding later flowering plants to this, such as what have we got on here? Ivy, daisy, sedums and things, and even the winter bedding as well, like pansies and things. They can provide some much needed late season nectar, which provides energy for the insects, particularly pollinators. They go crazy for this as well. This will really help them to get through the winter because it'll provide that much needed energy. And it'll pollinate them as well, which is what they want. The flowers want to be pollinated. The pollinators are looking for flowers at that time of year to pollinate. So it's perfect. So providing these kind of later flowering plants, you're really going to be supporting the pollinators and your garden as well. So the pollinators are going to come looking for them. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please feel free to either post below this video or post in the group as well. And I will see you in next week's National Gardening Live on Tuesday. So we're in November already, people. I don't know what's going on. So I will catch you later. Have a great day and try not to get too blown away. See you later.